Mariana Trench is the deepest place on Earth, almost 6.8 miles deep, where eternal darkness reigns, where the pressure can crush a human in a second, where terrifying deep-sea monsters live, and about which we knew almost nothing. Until now, because now one country is moving toward full control of these depths, and not just for science. China is deploying fleets of deep-sea robots, building underwater bases, and quietly taking over what lies on the bottom, while the rest of the world doesn't even realize what is happening. In the past 5 years, China has invested more than $50 billion in ocean research, more than all other countries in the world combined. They have created 12 new research centers, hired more than 1,000 top marine biologists and engineers from around the world, and launched 47 different deep-sea missions. Their new Deep-Sea Research Institute in Qingdao covers an area of 500 acres and is equipped with supercomputers capable of modeling ocean processes with unprecedented precision. The Chinese corporation, CSIC, has built special shipyards to produce deep-sea vehicles, where new robots roll off the assembly line every month. A huge underwater robotics laboratory opened in Shanghai, employing almost 1,000 engineers. Peking University launched a training program for specialists in deep-sea technology. Every year it graduates 500 highly qualified engineers in this field. While the United States cuts ocean research budgets every year, China is diving deeper, moving faster, and investing more aggressively than any nation in history. And what they have discovered in the depths changes everything. The Mariana Trench is a massive underwater canyon in the western Pacific Ocean, east of the Philippines. It is the deepest part of the ocean and one of the most extreme places on Earth. The trench stretches 1,585 miles long and 43 miles wide, about the size of New York State, but turned vertically into the depth. If Mount Everest were placed on the bottom of the trench, its peak would still be 1.2 miles below sea level. To reach the bottom, you must pass through the entire thickness of ocean water, a journey through several completely different worlds, each with its own laws of physics and biology. It's like descending through the atmospheres of different planets, all gathered in one place. At the surface, everything feels familiar. A warm, sunlit zone with coral reefs and schools of fish. The water temperature here reaches 82 degrees Fahrenheit, and sunlight penetrates down to 260 feet, supporting a rich ecosystem. Here live dolphins, sharks, rays, and thousands of species of tropical fish. But just 650 feet deeper begins the twilight zone, where sunlight slowly fades away and the pressure grows to 10 times higher than at the surface. Strange creatures live here. Silvery, snake-like fish as long as a bus, and transparent sea angels fluttering in the darkness. Giant jellyfish drift like ghosts, and squids with glowing tentacles hunt in the dim light. The temperature here drops to 39 degrees Fahrenheit. There is less and less oxygen. Its concentration falls dramatically, dropping to just 1/14 of surface levels. It was in this zone that Chinese researchers found the first signs of something unusual. Abnormal magnetic fields that did not match any known geological structure. The magnetometers on their robots recorded fluctuations in the magnetic field with intensity up to 2,000 nanoteslas, 20 times stronger than normal for this depth. At a depth of 0.6 miles begins the full darkness of the midnight zone. The only light here comes from the bioluminescence of the creatures themselves. The pressure here is a crushing 100 times greater than at sea level, like having a full-grown elephant pressing down on every square inch of your body. In this zone live amazing creatures, giant squids with eyes the size of soccer balls, anglerfish with their own glowing lures, and jellyfish the size of a car, drifting in absolute silence. Here lives the legendary giant squid, a creature up to 60 feet long, with tentacles covered in suckers the size of dinner plates. The anglerfish uses its glowing lure to draw prey straight into its mouth, lined with sharp teeth. Sea devils with enormous mouths and telescopic stomachs can swallow prey larger than themselves. In this zone, Chinese sensors began recording something shocking. Organized movements of large objects, not chaotic but following specific routes. Analysis of sonar data showed structures the size of multi-story buildings slowly moving along the ocean floor. Some of these objects moved at speeds of up to 2 miles per hour, incredibly fast for deep-sea currents. Officially, Chinese scientists stated that these were underwater avalanches, but secret documents spoke of the regularity and predictability of these movements. At 2.5 miles begins the Abyssal zone, cold, dark, and quiet. The temperature here stays constant at 36 degrees Fahrenheit all year round. The ocean floor seems like ordinary mud, but this mud is deceptive. For millions of years, everything that dies in the ocean slowly sinks down. Fish, plankton, even the tiniest particles. This marine snow builds up layer by layer, forming soft silt that in some places is over half a mile thick. Buried in this silt is the history of the ocean over the past 200 million years. Chinese ultra-deep drilling rigs penetrated these layers and discovered incredible things. In silt samples, 50 million years old, they found microorganisms that are still alive. These ancient bacteria have adapted to conditions found nowhere else on Earth, and they could hold the key to creating new medicines or even to understanding the origin of life on our planet. Especially interesting were the so-called living fossils, bacteria that use chemical processes for energy that existed on Earth billions of years ago, when the atmosphere still had no oxygen. These organisms feed on hydrogen sulfide and methane, turning poisonous gases into harmless compounds. When a dead whale falls to the ocean floor, it becomes a magnet for life. Chinese researchers discovered that around such whale graveyards, the concentration of rare metals is many times higher than normal. The decomposing whale tissues create unique chemical reactions with seawater that literally pull precious elements out of dissolved minerals in the water. A single large whale can create a deposit of rare earth metals worth tens of millions of dollars. Analysis of the seabed in these areas showed high concentrations of cerium, neodymium, and terbium, metals critically important for making magnets in wind turbines and electric vehicles. The process of a whale decomposing on the ocean floor can take up to 100 years. First, the soft tissues are eaten by sharks and crabs, then worms and mollusks strip the bones, and finally bacteria break down the fat inside the bones, creating a unique ecosystem. Around one whale skeleton, there can be up to 200 species of living organisms, many of which are found nowhere else. Moreover, biochemists discovered that the bacteria feeding on decomposing whales produce unique enzymes. These enzymes can break down plastic at temperatures as low as 14 degrees Fahrenheit, a discovery that could revolutionize waste recycling. 1 gram of such enzymes is worth up to $100,000 on the black market. Even deeper, at 3.7 miles, begins the hadal zone, named after Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. This is the territory of ocean trenches. Only a few underwater vehicles have ever reached such depths. The crushing pressure here is 600 times greater than at the surface, like having 50 full-grown elephants pressing down on every square inch of your body. At such pressure, lead becomes as fluid as water, and air compresses 600 times. Life in the hadal zone seems impossible, but it exists. Chinese robots discovered colonies of bacteria that feed directly on hydrogen seeping from the Earth's mantle. These organisms survive without sunlight and organic matter. They draw energy directly from the depths of the planet. Studying their metabolism could lead to the creation of very efficient next-generation biofuel. Also here, live amphipods, tiny crustaceans the size of a thumb, which look like transparent shrimp. They feed on organic particles falling from above and can survive pressures that would instantly kill any surface animal. Their cells contain special proteins that prevent the destruction of cell membranes under pressure. And finally, at almost 6.8 miles, the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Here the pressure is so intense that it feels like 90 adult elephants pressing on each area of your body the size of a finger. On the bottom of the Mariana Trench, Chinese robots discovered traces of gigantic geological structures, underground caves and tunnels stretching for tens of miles. These cavities are so large that entire cities could fit inside them. Preliminary analysis showed that these caves were not formed by water erosion, as previously thought, but by ancient volcanic processes. Inside these caves, special sensors recorded temperatures up to 752 degrees Fahrenheit and mysterious seismic pulses at a frequency of 7.83 Hertz, exactly the same as the Earth's natural resonance frequency. Some scientists suggest that these caves may be connected to the planet's core through a network of magma channels. The largest of the discovered caves has a volume of about 12 cubic miles, like several large cities placed underground. Analysis of echolocation data showed that inside the cave, there are several levels connected by vertical shafts. It looks much more like an artificial structure of colossal scale than a natural geological formation. Even at the very bottom, life does not give up. Here live xenophytophores, giant single-celled organisms up to 8 inches in size, which build little houses out of sand grains and organic remains. They filter seawater, extracting nutrients from it, and can live for hundreds of years. The first descent to the bottom of the Mariana Trench took place in 1960. Swiss engineer Jacques Picard and U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh spent only 20 minutes at the bottom in the bathyscaphe Trieste. Their craft weighed 150 tons but could carry only 880 pounds of payload. Then for more than 50 years, no one repeated this feat. James Cameron descended there alone in 2012, but his dive lasted only 3 hours. Victor Vescovo made several dives between 2018 and 2022, each costing about $20 million. All of these missions were rare, expensive, and mostly one-time events, until China entered the game. The Chinese approach was radically different. Instead of prestigious single dives, they focused on creating a permanent presence in the depths. In 2020, China sent a team of 3 people to the bottom in the Fendu submersible. This craft was revolutionary. Instead of a steel sphere, it used a proprietary titanium alloy 3 times stronger than regular titanium. Fendu could remain on the bottom for up to 12 hours and lift rock samples weighing up to 440 pounds to the surface. But that was just the beginning of a large-scale operation. Chinese engineers developed a revolutionary technology: spherical titanium capsules capable of withstanding pressure of 16,000 psi. Inside each capsule is an autonomous AI module that can make decisions without communicating with the surface. These robots are equipped with quantum processors cooled almost to absolute zero, giving them incredible computing power thousands of times greater than ordinary computers. In just 4 years, the Chinese deployed a network of 240 such robots across the Pacific Ocean. Each robot costs about $15 million, but their capabilities surpass anything other countries have. They can drill the seabed to depths of up to 160 feet, analyze the chemical composition in real time, carry out small underwater explosions for seismic surveys, and even build simple structures on the bottom. By 2024, the Dragon of the Depths appeared, a robot no bigger than a shoebox, representing a masterpiece of Chinese engineering. Its body is made of a composite material based on carbon nanotubes, so strong that a bullet could not penetrate it. Inside are quantum processors capable of processing terabytes of data per second. Its energy system runs on radioisotope elements that can power the robot for up to 30 years without recharging. This robot weighs only 100 pounds but can perform tasks that previously required vehicles weighing tens of tons. Its manipulators can lift objects weighing up to 1,100 pounds, and its drilling unit can penetrate even very hard rock formations. The Dragon of the Depths is equipped with systems that seem like science fiction. Its sensors can detect metal objects the size of a coin from over 3,000 feet away. Its chemical analyzers can determine the composition of a substance from a single molecule dissolved in water. In addition, the robot has a feature that the Chinese prefer not to talk about. It is equipped with a self-replication system. If suitable materials are available, the robot can create a simplified copy of itself in 72 hours. China is developing entire fleets of specialized robots. The Harvester swarm, about the size of a soccer ball, move in groups of 50, collecting microscopic samples and creating detailed 3-dimensional maps of the seabed's chemical composition. The drillers, cylindrical devices, 6.5 feet long, bore holes into rock and can extract cores from depths up to 330 feet. The hunters, fast triangular robots, specialize in searching for specific objects or anomalies. moving at speeds up to 15 knots even at depths of 5 miles. The mimics are able to change their shape, imitating marine creatures and disguising themselves as fish, squids, or even jellyfish. Their outer shell is made of programmable matter, a substance that can change color, texture, and even bioluminescence, accurately reproducing the appearance of local fauna. These robots can sneak unnoticed into the most heavily guarded areas of the ocean. But the most secret project is the Leviathans, robots the size of a truck, capable of reproducing and building on their own. If such a robot finds enough raw material on the ocean floor, it can build a copy of itself in just a few weeks. Theoretically, a single Leviathan could create an entire army of robots, exponentially increasing China's presence in the ocean without the need to deploy more from the surface. The deep sea holds enormous resources. Cold seeps, places where methane and hydrogen sulfide seep from beneath the seabed, support entire ecosystems of mussels, mollusks, and tube worms that survive without sunlight. Methane hydrates, frozen methane in icy cages, contain energy equivalent to millions of tons of oil. Chinese researchers discovered that in some areas the concentration of methane hydrates is so high that the entire section of seabed is literally made of combustible ice. 1 square mile of such seabed contains energy equivalent to 26 million tons of oil. Preliminary estimates suggest that the Mariana Trench alone holds enough methane hydrates to power the entire world for 500 years. That is 200 times more than all known oil and gas reserves on the planet. The Chinese developed a technology for controlled extraction of these hydrates. Their robots can carefully heat sections of the seabed with laser units up to 50 kilowatts, turning the solid hydrates into gas, which is then collected in special containers. This technology allows China to literally extract energy directly from the seabed without bringing it to the surface. One robot can collect up to 700 cubic feet of gas per day. Polymetallic nodules, round stones the size of a potato, containing valuable metals like cobalt, nickel, copper, and manganese, are scattered across the seabed. These metals are critically important for batteries, electric vehicles, and renewable energy systems. 1 ton of nodules contains more cobalt than all the land deposits in Africa combined. The process of forming nodules takes millions of years. Metals slowly precipitate from seawater around small cores, often fragments of bones or teeth of ancient fish. Chinese geologists discovered that the richest nodule deposits are found in zones of ancient underwater volcanoes, where geothermal activity accelerated the concentration of metals. China plans to build a permanent underwater base at a depth of 1.2 miles, Tianlong, the Heavenly Dragon. This modular structure made of ultra-strong titanium alloy has a diameter of 50 feet and a height of 25 feet. The base is designed for a crew of 12 people who can stay underwater for up to 6 months without replacement. The living modules are equipped with air and water regeneration systems, hydroponic farms for growing food, and even a gym with equipment adapted for high-pressure conditions. The base is powered by an autonomous 50-megawatt nuclear reactor, enough to power a small city. The reactor runs on thorium fuel, a material that cannot be turned into nuclear weapons, but even in small amounts provides stable and reliable energy for decades. The cooling system uses surrounding seawater, with the discharged water only 4 degrees Fahrenheit warmer, eliminating any impact on the local ecosystem. The most impressive feature is the base's communication system. The Chinese developed a technology of quantum communication through water, which allows instant data transmission to the surface without delays. This system is based on the principles of quantum entanglement and works faster than any underwater cables. Its bandwidth reaches up to 100 terabits per second. Inside are 3D printers capable of creating new robots from materials extracted from the seabed. The printers work with titanium, aluminum, rare earth metals, and can even produce complex electronics from seabed materials. The base can expand on its own, building new modules and equipment without help from the surface. But there is also something very troubling in the depths. Beneath the ocean floor runs the nervous system of the modern world. Undersea data cables that carry 99% of international internet traffic. These cables are thinner than a garden hose, but all the world's information flows through them. trillions of dollars in banking transactions, government communications, military data, personal correspondence of billions of people. In March 2025, the Chinese government confirmed the creation of a high-tech deep-sea device capable of cutting reinforced undersea cables at depths up to 2.5 miles. Officially, it is positioned as a tool for rescue operations, but experts immediately noted its military purpose. These robots can not only cut cables, but also attach listening devices the size of a coin to them. These devices can intercept all traffic, emails, banking transactions, state secrets, military data. Even more frightening, the robots can plant remotely detonated explosives. One command from the surface, and dozens of cables around the world would be destroyed simultaneously. In the event of conflict, this weapon could paralyze entire countries in minutes. Banking systems would collapse, government communications would be cut off, military networks would go dark. Modern civilization, dependent on the internet, would stop like a clock. Western intelligence agencies are aware of this threat, but they are absolutely powerless against it. The robots operate at depths inaccessible to most military submarines. They can hide in underwater canyons for months and activate at any moment. According to intelligence estimates, the Chinese have already deployed dozens of such devices along key cable routes. Some experts even say the number could be in the hundreds or thousands, silently patrolling the entire ocean floor. All of the planet's main internet arteries, from transatlantic cables to Asian trunk lines, are already under their control. This means that if China wished, it could paralyze the rest of the world almost instantly. One coordinated attack, and Europe, America, Australia would be cut off. For the first time, humanity faces a situation where its technological dependence has become a deadly vulnerability to one country, hidden in the depths of the ocean. Meanwhile, the United States is losing ground. Science budgets are being cut, and the current administration slashed funding for NOAA, the only agency responsible for researching U.S. ocean territories. NOAA's budget fell from $6.9 billion in 2023 to $4.2 billion in 2025. More than 2,000 researchers were laid off or transferred. While China pours money and talent into its laboratories, the U.S. sidelines the only agency created to compete in ocean research. American oceanographic ships sit idle in ports for lack of funds for fuel and maintenance. Research programs that have been running for decades have now been shut down. Young scientists are leaving to work in other countries or abandoning oceanography entirely. While Chinese robots roam the ocean depths, American marine science is experiencing its worst crisis in 50 years. But the most shocking discovery of deep-sea research turned out to have nothing to do with resources or technology. In June 2024, while exploring one of the underwater mountains, Chinese robots came upon a grim scene. Dozens, then hundreds of rusty barrels buried in the silt of the ocean floor. The dumping site covered an area of about 6 square miles, more than 50,000 containers, neatly arranged in a grid with intervals of about 33 feet. Scientists quickly realized this was no random dump. It was an organized mass burial of radioactive waste, carried out over decades according to a clear plan. Analysis of the metals showed that the oldest containers were dumped back in the 1960s. On many barrels, markings of European nuclear companies could still be discerned. The largest European corporations had simply dumped their nuclear waste in the ocean, choosing the deepest places where they thought no one would ever find it. The radiation level at the epicenter of the burial site exceeded the norm by 15,000 times, a level of radiation that is deadly to humans within minutes. Many containers have already been destroyed, as decades of corrosive seawater have eaten through the steel walls, and the radioactive contents are slowly leaking into the ocean. Computer modeling revealed the scale of the disaster. Radioactive substances have already created a dead zone with a radius of 30 miles around the burial site. Ocean currents are slowly spreading the contaminated water throughout the world. Within a few decades, radioactive particles will reach the shores of all continents. Even worse, the burial site is located near an active seismic fault, where earthquakes occur every 15 to 20 years. The last earthquake was in 2019. The next one could happen at any moment. Scientists conducted a detailed simulation of a high-magnitude earthquake. If it ever happens, the underwater tremors will destroy at least 30,000 containers at once. A cloud of radioactive dust will rise from the seabed and be carried away by deep-sea currents. In the first 48 hours, contaminated water will spread over an area larger than the entire territory of France. The most terrifying part is that the containers cannot be safely brought to the surface. Engineers analyzed 47 different scenarios for lifting the containers. Every option ended in disaster. When lifted from great depths, the pressure inside the containers would drop so sharply that they would explode like bombs, dispersing radioactive substances in the water. Many containers are already so corroded that they fall apart at the slightest touch. Some contain radioactive liquid under pressure. If such a container ruptures at depth, it would create a radioactive geyser several miles high, instantly contaminating vast volumes of water. Even trying to isolate the burial site in place is almost impossible. It would require building an underwater sarcophagus the size of a small city, a structure 650 feet high and 3 miles in diameter. The cost of such a project would be at least $1 trillion, and the risk of failure exceeds 50%. And even a successful sarcophagus could only delay the catastrophe by a few decades. The amount of radioactive material in the underwater burial site exceeds the Chernobyl release by 200 times. But unlike Chernobyl, where radiation mostly settled within a few hundred miles, ocean currents will spread the contamination around the entire globe. Climatologists modeled the long-term consequences. According to their calculations, 50 years after a hypothetical earthquake, the average radiation level on the planet would triple. Cancer rates would rise 8-fold. Human life expectancy would decrease by an average of 15 years. Ocean ecosystems would be permanently destroyed. Plankton, the foundation of the entire marine food chain, would mutate or die within the first months. Tuna, salmon, cod, the main commercial fish species, would disappear. Billions of people who get most of their protein from seafood would face hunger. The most horrifying scenario is linked to a possible chain reaction. If radiation penetrates underground aquifers through cracks in the ocean floor, it could activate other hidden nuclear burial sites around the world. Over the past 70 years, different countries have secretly buried nuclear waste in the oceans. The discovered site is just the first of many such graveyards scattered across the seabed. Scientists fear this is only the tip of the iceberg. Somewhere in the depths lie dozens of other radioactive cemeteries. The total amount of submerged radioactive materials could exceed 200,000 tons. If all these burial sites collapse at once under the influence of rising radiation, Earth would become a dead planet for decades. The catastrophe has already begun, just very slowly and still unnoticed by most people. Sensors are detecting rising levels of radiation in fish around the world. The level of cesium-137 in tuna has increased by 15% over the past year. Traces of strontium-90 have been found in seaweed. This means that radioactive substances from ocean dumps have already begun their deadly journey across the planet. Geologists warn earthquakes near the burial zone are not a question of if, but of when. Seismic activity in the region is increasing. Minor tremors are happening more often. And somewhere in the depths of the ocean, the rusty containers continue to slowly break apart, preparing to turn the cradle of life into its grave.